The word hate, you mentioned that. The word hate, or you heard me mention that. It's thrown around a lot these days. Politicians will use this word as a weapon against their opponents. You have activists that will use it as an accusation against anyone who disagrees with them. Oh, you're just a hater. You're a hater. Maybe you've been called a hater. Or you've heard people called haters before. Children will use it as a defense to persuade their parents not to make them eat broccoli. You hate me, or I hate you. You've all been told that by your kids probably at one point in your life. And in the days of Jesus, even God-fearing Jews used it against Gentiles. Whether they said it out loud, I don't know, but they certainly lived it out loud for sure. And Gentiles used it against Jews as well. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus takes on this issue by quoting some of the teachers of their day, which are teaching incorrectly. Up to this point, Jesus has been quoting a part of the law. You've heard it said, you've heard it taught, and then he says, well, here's what God really means here. This time, he's going to quote a teaching that isn't in the law, but it's being presented as law. He says in Matthew chapter 5:43, you have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. That was the teaching of their day. There were actually people going around saying that you go ahead and love the people who are like you, the people who you share things in common with, who you like to hang out with, but go ahead and hate the people you don't like. I mean, maybe they have a different ethnicity background than you have. Maybe they support a different political group than you do. Maybe they make a whole lot more or a whole lot less money than you do for whatever reason. And if you don't like them, go ahead and hate them. That's okay. That was the teaching at that time. The problem is that is not what the Old Testament says. That is not what was in the law. It's a twisting of the actual law that's found in Leviticus 19 in verse 18, where it says, do not take revenge or bear a grudge against members of your community, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Now, I don't know where they got from that verse, it's okay to hate people, but somehow they twisted it and turned it and made it into it's okay to hate. Love the people like you, hate the people who are not like you. Clearly, that's not what this says. I mean, it's not even close. But over time, it became accepted teaching. I mean, it was just standard teaching on this verse, and it became part of the normal behavior of many people. And honestly, I don't know if the world has changed a whole lot since then. There's a reason that's in there, because by nature, we tend to not like people who are not like us. Everywhere you go, you see entire groups of people hating each other for no other reason than the fact that they were born. I don't know anything about you, but you look this way or act this way or think this way, therefore I hate you. We throw a label on people. Racism is everywhere. It's in every nation, between every ethnic group. The world is filled with violence and hatred. 2 weeks ago, you probably haven't seen much about this on the news. 2 weeks ago, 70 Christians were beheaded in the Congo because they're Christian. I don't know if they knew these people. They went to a church, attacked it, beheaded 70 people. Gaza, it's been a hotbed of violence and murder for forever, for as long as it's been around, right? It's because of hatred. When I was in high school, actually just like the grade under, at Hoover High School down the road, the National Guard was called out because a group of refugees from Laos was brought in, and there was racial tensions. People hated each other. There was violence going on, and they actually brought in National Guard to calm people down. When I was in college, I had a friend that was attacked with a hammer because people assumed he was gay. I don't know if he was or not, to be honest, but he was attacked because that's what they thought. He was in the hospital for some time. We could go on forever. People do all kinds of evil things when they're taught that it's okay to hate people. The Jewish people whom Jesus was talking here were known to be ruthless toward the Gentile people, anybody who wasn't a Jew. Gentiles were considered second class. They were considered barbaric to them. They were thought of as dogs and treated as dogs. Gentiles treated Jews pretty much the same way. It was a hate-hate relationship. So when people were taught to love their neighbor and hate their enemies, the average person was I'm good with that. I can do that. They left synagogue that day and thought, okay, all right, this is good. I'm doing all right. Which is why Jesus had to make this correction. Hey, we're here learning what it is to be a kingdom person, his Sermon on the Mount. So people, let me correct this one for you. You've heard it said to love your neighbor and hate your enemies, but in verse 44 he says, but I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Well, that's not fun. That's not what they came to hear. And he explains why. So that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he causes his sun, to rise on the evil and the good. He sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward will you have? Don't even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brother and sisters, what are you doing out of the ordinary? Don't even the Gentiles do the same? The people that they're looking down on, they're like, aren't they? You're acting just like them. Why you hate them and you're doing the same thing? Be perfect, he says in verse 48. Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Why love your enemies? Jesus tells them, because that's what the children of God do. You want to be a kingdom person? That's what we do. We love our enemies. Because that's what Jesus was talking about when he said that the kingdom people would live out a righteousness greater than that of the Pharisees. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Because loving your brother and hating your enemy is the easy way, and we're called to the more difficult way. We're called to the narrow road. We're called to live the way that Jesus calls perfection in verse 48. And Jesus reminds us here that God, he treats everybody the same. When the rain falls, it falls on everybody, whether you're an atheist or a lover of God, whether you're a follower of Jesus, dedicated all the way, or someone who absolutely hates the church, whether you have perfect attendance at church for 5 years in a row, or whether you are wishing the church didn't even exist. It doesn't matter. They all get the same blessing from the same rain. Now, if we were in control, it might be different. All my friends, I want to make sure they have 85-degree weather, nice and sunny. Only rain when they need it, make sure things stay green. And for those who I don't like, or people who don't like God, we're going to get them -20 all the year round. We do all kinds of silly things. And Jesus just reminds them, no, you know what? That's why you're not in charge. The righteous and the unrighteous, they all get the same blessing from the same rain, from the same sun, all the stuff, right? So Jesus is making a bold statement here that contradicted really generations of ungodly teaching. And it contradicts ungodly teaching that we have out there today, telling us how to treat people of different races, how to treat people with different points of view than we have, how to treat people who for any reason are not like us. Well, that's not like me. I don't like that. So? Doesn't mean you don't get to not like them. Doesn't mean you get to hate them. He reminds the crowd that even the people they considered to be their enemies know how to love. I mean, the tax collectors love people who love them back. What's so much of a big deal if you do that? I mean, the tax collectors do that. The Gentiles greet people who are just like them. That's not so special. So you say hello to your neighbor, whatever. Can you say hello? Can you greet your enemy? Jesus is saying here, if you want to be a part of my kingdom, you're going to have to do better than the tax collectors, better than the Gentiles, and as he said earlier, better than the Pharisees. You're going to have to love your enemies. You're going to have to pray for those who persecute you. So who are our enemies? Well, I don't know if you have an enemy list. I hope not. You might have a group of people maybe you don't like, or people you don't trust, or people you don't even know, but you put them in a label. It's like, oh, they're that label. I'm not sure I should, talk to them at all. Anybody you think is different than you are. If you listen to the politicians, white people aren't supposed to like black people aren't supposed to like white people. I don't think anybody's supposed to like Asians. I mean, you can just go on, and it's just like, what, why? Because they were born that way? I mean, I have no control how I was born. It's just how I popped out. It's what it is, right? It's how it is. But why would we not like someone because of that? Democrats are supposed to hate Republicans. Republicans are supposed to hate Democrats. Straight people are supposed to hate gay people. Gay people are supposed to hate straight people. I mean, you go take out any category that you can put a label on, and they're all supposed to hate each other. Then you turn on the cable news station that compound the whole problem by bringing people from both sides, and they sit and yell at each other for hours on end. And as listeners, we're like cheering for the people we are for and jeering against the people we're against, and we get all riled up. We're like, yeah, we hate, and it just kind of grows the whole problem. We create all kinds of enemies by simply sticking a label on them. You're all alike. All white people are alike. All Latinos are alike. Whatever, it doesn't matter where, what ethnic group. We're all alike. And then we dehumanize them, and it makes it easier to hate them. That's not my neighbor, that's a Republican. That's not my neighbor, that's a Democrat. I don't have to love that person. That's a Christian bigot. It's a whole group of people who think you're a bigot just because you're here today serving Jesus. They don't even know you. They've slapped that label on you. That dude's wearing a dress. I don't have to love him or her or whatever. I'll say him. Some would say that makes me hateful. We throw that stuff around. But Jesus says, here's the deal. If you're going to be in my kingdom, you're going to love the person you consider to be your enemy. Love them. Love them. You're going to pray for the person who considers you to be their enemy, even when they mistreat you. And he doesn't mean, pray that they get toe fungus and cavities. I prayed for them. It's like, that's not. We're to pray blessing on them. We're to pray for their family. We're to pray for their health. We're to pray for their success. We're to pray for them to have a good life. Ultimately, I pray that they will know truth and know Jesus, because that's ultimately all that really matters. But we're to pray for them. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be best friends with them. You don't have to hang out with them every day. You don't have to plan a fishing trip with them. But you do have to love them as people who were created in the image of God, just as you were, just as I was. We were all created by God in his image. A couple weeks ago, I thought I was being funny. I don't know. I often think I'm being funny, and I'm not. But this day, I did the same thing. I posted a picture of some bacon and eggs I had for breakfast. And maybe some of you saw it. I posted, I'm so proud to report I met with a loan officer yesterday, and he approved me for breakfast with eggs, and aren't they funny, ha. And I didn't think anything about it. And some dude who was on my friend list got on there, and he wasn't happy about that at all. He thought I was being political, and, you're a Trump lover, and blah, 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 blah. Then he came back, you're a hypocrite, and I'm going to call you Pastor Hypocrite. And I'm going like, I mean, I didn't talk about a former or a present president. It's just eggs. I don't know, if you go to the store, they're expensive, That's kind of the whole point of the thing. Ha ha, funny joke, I got a loan, I got some eggs. And this guy just went off. And I was going to respond with something snotty, like sometimes I'll kind of push back a little bit, like on the YouTubes and stuff. But I try not to be snotty, just like maybe thoughtful, maybe a little pithy a little bit. But then I remember Proverbs 26:4, don't answer a fool according to his foolishness, or you'll be like him yourself. So I just didn't say anything. But I also didn't think I was required to be his best friend, that I didn't have to allow those comments to feed more anger and more hatred by people on either side of whatever president or whatever the people were going to argue about. So I went ahead and unfriended him and blocked him and removed his comments. I just didn't want it to become a thing. It's like, it's eggs. It's eggs. Like, am I hateful for talking about eggs? No, the guy was being hateful there. I don't hate him. Honestly, I can't even tell you his name. It was one of those, people that friends are friends, and they're like, okay, I just approved the thing. Who knows how long we've been friends even. And all of a sudden, I was like, okay, we just don't need that in my life. So I got rid of it. So somewhere along the line, I heard this or read it. I don't know if I read it, heard it, school, conference, wherever, but it's a theme I've seen before, that you can love someone without praying for them. So it's possible I can love you and not pray for you. Like, I forget, I'm busy, whatever. But it's impossible to pray for someone without loving them. I mean, you might not love them in the beginning. Jesus says, hey, pray for your enemies. I think if you keep praying for enemies, pretty soon you're just going to love them. You can't help it because you're praying for them. And there's a heart connection when you pray for someone. So I think it's a pretty good solid principle. It's not scripture, it's not Bible verse or anything like that, but it's a pretty good idea. You can love someone without praying for them, but it's impossible to pray for someone without loving them. This came to mind a number of years ago, like 25 years ago or something, when I had a guy in my life who just didn't like me. Right? I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he and his wife, I would say, if you look at the fruit, if you look at the conversations, they hated me. They just plain hated me. When the church we were at was first started, he was there and his wife was there. They would help start the thing, and they helped build a thriving, active Sunday night program, which evidently was a really good thing in the big thing in the 70s or whenever that was. And they started a Wednesday night program, and it was thriving, it was good. And a lot of good things happened in that program. And for 2 decades, those things went on. Then I came in, and by the time I got there, both were pretty much dead. Single-digit numbers, and no one would come. And it's like, we're putting all this stuff together for 3 people came. It's like, maybe we let's rethink about what we're doing here. And so I implemented a couple things, implemented a small groups ministry. That was in the mid-90s when that was kind of catching on all over the place. Everybody was doing small groups, and we started one, and everybody, man, people were in small groups. They were spreading like wildfire through the church, and everybody was loving it. They were meeting in homes. They were having Bible studies. They were connecting with each other at a different level. They built, relationships were healthy. It was a good thing. And then I implemented a new Wednesday night program that targeted youth and young adults, and introduced the band for the first time. And it was, admittedly, it was pretty rough, the band was. None of us really knew what we were doing, especially me. But it was kind of the same study. It was keep the lights down low. We kind of come and be informal and get a Bible study. And it was attracting younger people and non-believers. And we had a pretty good, decent group there, more than we had before that happened. And this gentleman saw what was going on as a threat to all the things that he had built previously in the past. He hated the new programs. He hated me for introducing them. Church is meant to happen at the church building, right? Not in homes. And I'd say, well, let's look at Acts, the book of Acts. Here's a verse, and we kind of go back and forth on stuff. And the awkward thing about this is this was like, an old school church with a traditional church board and all these people and votes and seconds and Robert's Rule of Orders. And he happened to be the chairman of the board, which made it kind of rough because he would take opportunities every single month to call me out in meetings as defiant and stubborn and obstinate. And he insisted each month, both directly and passive-aggressively, that I was destroying the church and it was doing great before I got there and him ruining everything. And it didn't get him anywhere with the board members. They're all like, well, I'm in a small group. I kind of like this. They all were liking what was happening. And so when that didn't work, he started building, working behind the scenes, building coalitions against me, making phone calls, having secret little meetings, gathering groups, trying to get rid of Dan thing, all working toward a case to get me dismissed and he could restore order in the church. But that didn't really get any traction either because, like I said, people enjoyed the small groups that they were in. I didn't bite on any of his public insults because he wanted to be able to have me lash back so he could say, see, look at that, and it's like, I didn't really bite on any of that. The people loved the things that were going on. They saw potential in the Wednesday. Again, it was pretty rough, but at least there was potential there. And that just made him hate me all the more as other things succeeded. I went down in his eyes. Now, during this time, I was reminded of this quote. I didn't hate the guy. I'm sure we see differently. You can think different than me, and I don't hate you. I think that means we think differently. Let's have a conversation. Maybe we both have something to add to this. But I was reminded of this quote and thought, maybe we should start praying together. So I asked him, well, would you pray with me? Let's meet together once a week, just you and me, we'll just pray. And of course, you can say no. It's a spiritual giant, right? And it's okay, I'll do it. But it was really awkward. He'd come and you could just see his blood pressure rising as he was sitting there talking to me about the small talk. And then we'd start praying, and I'd pray, for his health and for his wife and for his business and the success in his life and just all this stuff, right? Our relationship. And he'd pray, and then he'd pray about the weather and the other church leaders and maybe the economy. He'd pray about the president, which he really didn't like at the time. And he'd pray about everything but me. And I thought, well, okay, whatever. He gets to do that. We did that for a few weeks. And finally, he just kind of stopped coming. It was he just hated me so much. Finally, a couple years later, he has a heart attack, and the wife wouldn't call me, but the wife called someone to call me and make sure I knew not to visit them in the hospital because I'm the one who put him there, And I've destroyed his health and ruined his life and everything. And I bring that up because sometimes there's nothing you can do. Right? Sometimes someone's going to just hate you. If you have opinion about anything, or you have maybe a position in a job that they wish they had and you have it, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Sometimes there'll be people who just don't like you or maybe hate you, and there's really literally nothing you can do about it. Maybe they're racist and they don't like your ethnicity. Maybe they're in a different social, economic, and you either make way too little or way too much, and they're just not going to like you because of that. It has nothing to do with you. They just don't like you, and they hate you, and you can't help that. Sometimes there's nothing you could do about it, but it doesn't mean you get to hate them back. That's what Jesus is saying. No, you love that person. You're a kingdom person. Don't be like everybody else. Everybody else is going to hate them back, and it's going to be escalate, and it's going to fight, and it's going to be awful. No, you love them. You pray for them. That's what Jesus says. Maybe you might see yourself on both sides of this, where maybe you have people that you just don't like at all. Maybe you can think of why, like I said, maybe they have a job you wish you had, or maybe there's a morality issue you're on the opposite side of, and you're just like, you're wrong, and I just don't like you because of the things you say about this issue, or maybe they're in an opposing view politically, and you're in the wrong party, and I just can't stand working with you or living next to you or whatever. You might not even know why. Maybe you just don't like someone. You're just like, I don't know, I just hate them. But Jesus is getting at the root of that here and saying, no. You don't get to do that, kingdom person. You don't get to do that. You're called to love them, which may mean, if it's a political thing, backing off on the political conversations. For me, that's a discipline. I do kind of enjoy pushing buttons and stirring things, and so I have to force myself to not do that, and be as neutral as possible. I mean, I like to have a good conversation about real things, but if it's going to create anger, you got to know when. You got to really read the room and know when to step back a little bit. Maybe it means not talking about certain topics around them because you know that's their hot spot and it gets them going. I mean, you can address it periodically. You don't run from it, but don't just put it in their face all the time. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them or affirm every belief that they have, but you can figure out a way to not argue and not hate each other about it. You can definitely pray for them. Or maybe you're on the other side of that. Maybe you have someone in your life that just hates you. Maybe you know why, maybe you don't. Maybe they just know you're a Christian, and that's all it takes. I got people who hate me because I'm a Christian, and that's it. They just know. When they find out I'm a preacher, that usually escalates it even more. The worst conversation to have is when I'm out in public with someone I don't know, whatever setting, an airplane, a restaurant, whatever, and they're like, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm like, I'm a preacher. Some people are like, oh, yeah, and some people are like, they just don't like preachers. That's life. I get that. So you could have people that don't like you simply because you're a Christian. Or maybe they don't like you because, again, like I mentioned, maybe you hold a position they wish they held in the company or on the team or whatever your situation is. Maybe they hate you and they don't even know why. They don't like your hair. I mean, whatever, it doesn't matter. Some people don't need much of a reason. They just don't like you. They can't help it. So what do you do? Well, again, if it's a morality issue, they know where you stand on a particular issue. You can't change that. You can't change the Bible. We don't have permission to change the Bible to make them happy. We can't do that, but we cannot maybe rub their nose in it. We can be careful how we communicate. We communicate truth and love, as Peter says. If it's a political issue, you can avoid politics around them. I mean, or at least figure out a way to have adult conversation and not, heated anger conversations. You can go out of your way to be kind and compassionate toward them. If it's a personality issue, probably not much you can do about that. Just walk away. Just try to avoid them, I guess. I don't know. The point is, don't just keep rubbing their nose in it. In any of these cases, in any situation, you do still get to pray. Which is what Jesus was saying. Hey, there's someone who persecutes you, someone who just hates you, you pray for them. You love them, you pray for them. Even if they don't know you don't have to tell them you're praying for them. That might even make them more angry. Just pray for them. Keep praying for them. I never stopped praying for my friend. I've never hated him. I never even took it personally. I just knew we had different philosophies. It was just like, oh, I get it. But it was inappropriate, but I still get it. So I still loved him. I still prayed for him. And he passed away some time ago, and I expect to see him in heaven, and we'll be great friends then because it won't matter anymore because we'll be in small group together. No, I won't. See? I can't help it. I didn't tell him I was praying, but I did pray. And if he gets angry about that, it's not on me. That's on him. But I prayed for a relationship. I prayed for his health, and the whole thing for God to bless him, for God to move my heart, because maybe there's issues in me that I do throw out little verbal bombs once in a while without thinking. And so maybe there's areas in my life that needs to change. And I prayed for his heart. Maybe there's areas in his heart that needs to soften. But I prayed for both sides. That's just what we're called to do. We're not called to be like everybody else. We're called to be like Jesus, people. And love our enemies. Let's pray.